Okay, welcome to the notes for the scientific method in class. We completed these. I'm going to take you through them so that you can fill in your notes. We started as a class talking about what scientists do, and we did a brainstorm activity. And in class, we came up with this list, which outlines the process of science. Um, Scientists make observations about something. They ask, and that causes them to ask a question. They think about and collect their current knowledge related to that question, and they use that to form a hypothesis, which is a prediction based on their prior knowledge. Um, then they test that hypothesis either through an experiment or some sort of model or research. Then they take the data from those tests and they analyze it, and they use that data to then draw conclusions about whether their hypothesis was accurate or not. They would then share their findings with the rest of the scientific community and the public, and expect critique from that. And one thing we talked about in class was that rather than really this being a list like this, it's more of a cycle, like the circle over here, where a lot of times scientists would stop somewhere in the middle and realize they wanted to change something, and they'd go back up to the top and start over again. Either they'd draw conclusions that their hypothesis was incorrect, so they'd go back to their hypothesis and form a new hypothesis. They'd go through the process again, or their conclusions might cause them, to ask new questions, and so they'd go all the way back up to ask new questions and then go through that process again. So it's a little bit about the process of science. In addition to learning about that process, we also talk quite a bit about variables as we design an experiment. There are three different types of variables. There's the independent variable, which is in the purple balloon over here on the left, and that is the variable that is purposely changed in an experiment. So that's the one that we're trying to impact. The independent variable is the one that we're changing. And you would want to, of course, write the definition of that down in your notes there somewhere on the margins. I realize it doesn't fit on your balloon. The next variable we want to take a look at is the dependent variable, and like its name, it's telling you that it depends on the independent variable. So it's the variable in our experiment that may change as a result of the variable being tested. That's the dependent variable. And then the last variable is the control variable. And control variables are those variables that we want not to change so that we don't impact our results. They would be things such as temperature, depending on what your experiment is. Factors that are all kept the same except for the variable changed. It's very important in an experiment that if we're testing a particular variable, that we don't change the other variables. We keep them the same. For example, in our ball toss activity that we did in class, we threw the ball in the same manner to the person across from us, and they attempted to catch it either with one hand or with two hand. We kept all the variables other than the one hand or two hand the same. We kept the distance the same, how they threw the ball the same, but they changed whether they caught it with one hand or two hands. Okay. So here's just a scenario for you. Tom planted bean seeds in 3 rectangular shaped containers. The ends of 10 seeds were pointed up, 10 seeds were pointed down, and 10 were pointed sideways. All seeds were covered with soil. So it asks you, what's the independent variable here in this scenario? And remember, the independent variable is the variable in which we're trying to control. So in this case, Tom is trying to control the variable of which way the seeds are planted in the ground. So up, down, and sideways are the 3 different independent variables in this case. The dependent variable in this case is not stated in this scenario, but we can assume that Tom is trying to have an impact on the way the seeds, the way the plants grow. Do they grow taller if you plant them upside down or right side up or vertical? So plant growth would be the dependent variable. And the control variables that we're trying to control here in this scenario would be things like sunlight, depth at which we're planting them, planting them all in the same soil, those kind of things. The shape of the container would be an example stated in the scenario. The rest of these, as we go through your notes here, are additional scenarios. I'm going to go ahead and skip through them. We're really just testing your ability to label the independent, dependent, and control variables in these different scenarios. So you'd want to do that in your notes for full credit. We will do this last one here, just talk about does the height from which an egg is dropped affect the size of the egg splatter? We had a great conversation about this one in class. The independent variable, the variable that we are trying to change, is where the egg is dropped from. We're changing that. We're changing how high the egg is dropped. And then the the dependent variable, the variable that depends on that, we think depends on that independent variable, will be the size of the egg splatter, so how much it explodes. Control variables in this particular experiment could be things like dropping the egg the same way, not throwing it down, dropping it on the same surface, all those kind of things. Okay, so as we move on here, just the last thing we want to talk about in our notes is how to graph this information with the independent variable and dependent variable. The first thing we did as a class was we determined which axis on our graph is the y-axis and which axis is the x-axis. So the class said the x-axis was in fact the horizontal line running down here is the x-axis, and that this vertical line over here was the y-axis going this way. And then we talked quite a bit about the difference between the independent variable and the dependent variable, and what we decided was that the independent variable, the variable that we were changing, we wanted to see down here on the x-axis, and the dependent variable, the variable that was changed in our experiment, we wanted to see over here on the y-axis. And of course, we can check ourselves here by going to the next slide, which does in fact talk about the dependent variable being over here. On the y-axis, it's the respond variable. It responds to the independent variable. So as this variable increases, what does this variable do? That's what we want to see. Does it go up or does it go down? If it goes up, we get a line graph that goes up like that, maybe. If it goes down, we get a line that comes down this way like this. Or we might get something in the middle there. So we always want to put our dependent variable on the y-axis and our independent variable on the x-axis.